All right, students, so welcome to Human Physiology. This first chapter is divided into two parts, and you'll see as we work through the textbook, a lot of the PowerPoints are divided into several parts. The textbook we're using and all of the physiology instructors is an anatomy and physiology textbook combo. So you'll see a lot of anatomy review in these PowerPoints, which is good because you need to understand the structure of the human body to understand the function, which is what physiology really plays in. So we'll be reviewing a lot of anatomy, especially in this maybe in chapter 1, and then we'll get into more of the physiology parts as well. So I'm hoping you guys can all see the PowerPoint in front of you. And again, this is part A. These PowerPoints will always be posted on the Canvas module page. And then I'm just going to provide you my YouTube channel link that is specifically for this class where I will put all of these recorded lectures on. So the human body, as you know from anatomy, learning and understanding all the anatomical terminology first will allow you to communicate accurately with all of your colleagues in the health sciences. And a lot of you are probably here because you want to enter some sort of healthcare related field, whether that's nursing, PT, OT, a wide variety of things. So it's great to have you guys here. You're entering a really great field filled with job security, especially at the moment. So anatomy, as you guys knew, is the study of structure of body parts and their relationship to one another. So you spent a lot of time learning names of bones, names of muscles, and how they all are, where all they are located in relationship to each other. And then physiology is the study of the function of the body parts. So physiology more studies the function, how everything works together to carry out all the life-sustaining activities. We divide anatomy into gross or macroscopic anatomy, and that's the study of large visible structures. Regional anatomy looks at all the structures in a particular area of the body. Systemic anatomy looks at one system at a time. So looking at everything in the cardiovascular system first, nervous or muscular system. And that's probably how you guys studied anatomy in the past. You looked at all of the bones first and then the muscles. And then surface anatomy looks at internal structures as they relate to overlying skin. So visible muscle masses or veins seen on the surface. More subdivisions of anatomy. Microscopic anatomy deals with structures too small to be seen by the naked eye. So we talk about cytology being the microscopic study of cells, and histology is the microscopic study of tissues. Developmental anatomy is a really interesting branch of anatomy because this studies the physiological development throughout life, starting with embryology, which are the developments before birth. So I think that's a really interesting part of anatomy too. To study anatomy, one must know anatomical terminology, as you're well aware of, that we're going to briefly review, and to be able to observe, manipulate, palpate, and auscultate. Palpate means to touch, and auscultate means to hear. Subdivisions of physiology. We usually subdivide physiology based on organ systems. So we'll talk about the renal system having to do with the kidneys. So one chapter will be all on how your kidneys function and how the kidneys work to filter all the substances out of the blood to create urine. Cardiovascular physiology, we'll talk about the cardiac cycle, your heart, blood pressure. Physiology often focuses on cellular and molecular levels of the body. It looks at how the body's abilities are dependent on chemical reactions in individual cells. So this is where physiology gets a little trickier than anatomy because we're actually looking into how the cells function on a chemical level, how your body breaks down glucose to create ATP or energy. That's a big one. So to study physiology, one must understand basic physical principles like electrical currents, pressure differences in terms of breathing and movement, as well as basic chemical principles. So we're going to delve into a little bit of chemistry in this course and a little bit into physics, some of the physical properties. Anatomy and physiology are inseparable. Function always reflects the structure. What a structure can do depends on its specific form, and it's known as the principle of complementarity of structure and function. So that's how we define anatomy and physiology. And an example of this is just looking how your teeth are designed. So the sharp edges of your incisor teeth, which are kind of the pointer ones, are ideal for cutting things like scissors, which is the function, and the flat surfaces of your molar teeth, which are more in the back of your mouth, make them ideal for grinding, like a mortar and pestle. So this again describes how structure and function are directly related in anatomy and physiology. The human body is very organized from the smallest chemical level to the whole organism level. If you had me for anatomy, I taught anatomy many semesters ago, now I can't remember. I focus a lot on this structural organization, and I want you guys to know this organizational structure as well, because it kind of gives you kind of a bird's eye view and then works your way into kind of how the body is structurally organized. So we start with the chemical level. So everything starts as an atom, molecule, and organelle. Then those make up cells. So the cellular level are single cells. Then the tissue level will be groups of similar cells. The organ level will be two or more types of tissues. The organ system level are several organs working together. And then the organismal level is the human being level or another animal. These are where all the organ systems are combined to make the whole organism. So this is just the level of structural organization within the human body, starting with atoms, joining together to form molecules. Those will form organelles within a cell. Cells form tissues, tissues form organs, and then organs form organ systems, which will form the organism. And these slides, this textbook slides kind of takes you through it on a slide by slide basis that we'll cover over there. The requirements for life. So maintenance of life involves maintaining boundaries between structures within the body, between an organism and another organism, movement, responsiveness, think your nervous system, digestion, so the ability to take in food, and then metabolism is breaking down the food into energy. Excretion is important because your body can't get rid of and use everything it eats. It has to excrete the wastes. Reproduction, create more life, and then growth throughout the life. So those are necessary life functions. And then these next couple slides take you through a little more detail about the things necessary for life to function. So maintaining boundaries think of a separation between any internal and external environment. This could be a plasma membrane of your cells or the skin separating an organism from the environment. Movement, your muscular system allows your body to move its bones. Your muscles also allow blood to flow through your veins and arteries. Smooth muscle is important for digestion, urination. Contractility refers to the movement of muscles at a cellular level. Responsiveness is the ability of your bodies to sense and respond to stimuli. So right now you're able to hear me, hopefully, and you're able to see the PowerPoint in front of you. So those are all different stimuli that your body is sensing and perceiving, and your brain is working at a higher order level to take in that stimuli and be able to understand everything that's going on. The withdrawal reflex prevents injury. When you step on something, your body instantly withdraws itself from a painful stimulus. The control of breathing rate must change in response to different activities, whether you're exercising or sleeping. Digestion is the breakdown of anything ingested, followed by absorption of simple molecules into the bloodstream from your digestive tract. Metabolism are all the chemical reactions that occur in the body cells. It's the sum of all catabolism, which is the breakdown of molecules. So catabolism is breaking things down, and anabolism is synthesizing new molecules, so building things up. So metabolism are both of those combined, either breaking down molecules or synthesizing new ones. Excretion is the removal of wastes from metabolism and digestion, urea from the breakdown of proteins, carbon dioxide is a waste product from metabolism that your cells go through to create energy. And we get rid of carbon dioxide by exhaling. And then feces, the excretion of waste through the GI tract. Reproduction, the division of cells for growth or repair, is at the cellular level. And then at the organismal level, it's the production of offspring. And then growth is any increase in size of a body part or an organism. Humans are multicellular, so to function, individual cells must be kept alive. Organ systems are designed to service the cells, and all cells will depend on organ systems to meet their survival needs. And we're going to go quickly over the 11 organ systems that work together to maintain life that you probably went over in anatomy. This is an example of the interrelationship among body organ systems, and I'll try to make this bigger for you. There we go. So the digestive system is interrelated to the cardiovascular system, which is related to the respiratory and urinary system. So your digestive system takes in food, nutrients get absorbed through the bloodstream, and those nutrients eventually go to where they need to go via your arteries and veins. The cardiovascular system is connected to your respiratory system because you breathe in oxygen, which travels from your lungs into your arteries, eventually to your heart, where it can get pumped out. And then your urinary system, your kidneys, will filter all the blood in your body. The integumentary system kind of connects them all because it's the main kind of barrier between the external environment. So this is just an example of how these body organ systems are all interrelated. And it's really fun to see how they all work together. So integumentary system. So we'll go quickly over these 11 body systems as a review from anatomy. These are your hair, skin, and nails, providing the barrier, releasing sweat when you get too hot. The skeletal system, you loved learning all the names of the bones. This protects and supports body organs, so your bones are really important for protecting all the organs that lie kind of within them. Blood cells are formed within bones, and bones also stored minerals. Your muscular system is important for movement, locomotion, facial expression. Your muscles help you to maintain posture and producing heat. I've been telling my online students that I think our postures from being online and stuck on our computers all day, whether from work or school, our postures are terrible right now because we're all kind of hunched over to the computer. So try to sit up straight or stand while you're in class or working. That would be great too. The nervous system includes your brain, spinal cord, and all of your nerves. Helps to respond to the changing stimuli that it's perceiving from the internal and external environment. The endocrine system are all of the glands which secrete hormones that will regulate growth, reproduction, going through puberty, nutrient use by body cells. So this is your endocrine system. Cardiovascular system includes your heart, blood vessels. The main function of the cardiovascular system is the transport of blood, which itself is important for carrying oxygen, CO2, nutrients, and wastes. Lymphatic system, also sometimes known as the immune system. Your lymphatic system, I call it kind of the catch-all system. So your lymphatic system kind of picks up fluid leaked from your blood vessels and returns it back to the blood. So it's kind of the catch-all system. It disposes of debris. It houses white blood cells. And your white blood cells are involved in immunity. So the immune response is anything that your body does if something foreign invades it. So that's your lymphatic system and your immune system. The respiratory system includes your lungs, your nasal cavity, your trachea, your larynx, so the process of producing sound, but mainly taking in oxygen and removing carbon dioxide from the body. Digestive system, breaking down all the food into a absorbable unit that will enter the bloodstream for distribution to all of your body cells. Anything indigestible will be eliminated as feces. Urinary system eliminates nitrogenous wastes, regulates water and electrolyte balance. So your kidneys We'll filter all the blood on a daily basis. If your kidneys don't function, you have to go to a dialysis clinic, which hooks you up to a machine which filters the blood for you when your kidneys do not function correctly. Male and female reproductive system. Basically, the process of that is just to create sex cells, whether it's sperm or eggs, for the process of creating more offspring. And we'll talk more about male and female reproductive system toward the end. The survival needs then, humans need several factors for survival that must be in appropriate amounts. Too much or too little can be harmful. So the survival needs of humans depends on a kind of an exact or a relative amount of nutrients, oxygen, water, a normal body temperature, and an appropriate atmospheric pressure. And your body has a way of regulating itself called homeostasis to make sure that it has this accurate amount or appropriate amount of these things. Nutrients are all the chemicals for energy and cell building. So you get nutrients mainly through the food you eat, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, and vitamins. Oxygen is essential for the release of energy from foods. Your body can only survive a few minutes without oxygen. And we're going to specifically see the main role of oxygen and why we need oxygen in the bodies when we talk about cellular metabolism, which is the process of creating ATP or energy. Water is the most abundant chemical in the body. It provides the environment needed for a lot of the chemical reactions that your cells need to go through. It's the fluid base for all of your body's secretions and excretions. Think of saliva, think of urine, feces. So all of really the fluid base in your body needs water. Normal body temperature, if body temperature falls below or goes above 37 degrees Celsius, rates of different chemical reactions can be affected. So they'll go too slow or too high if your body's too hot or too cold. 37 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit, 98.6 is normal. And then appropriate atmospheric pressure. This is a specific pressure of the air that's needed for adequate breathing and gas exchange in the lungs. So you need the right pressure differences to exist between the exterior environment and inside your lungs for your lungs to take in air and also expel air. So homeostasis then, it's the maintenance of relatively stable internal conditions despite continuous changes in the environment. So we're not always at a perfect temperature. Maybe in Southern California you are, the temperature is always pretty nice there. But your body is constantly trying to maintain a state of equilibrium, always readjusting as needed. This can be temperature of the body. It can be how much hormones your bodies are getting from the glands. Homeostasis is maintained by contributions of all the organ systems. So how does your body maintain kind of this constant internal environment? Your nervous and endocrine systems play a major role. Variables are factors that can change. So this could be your blood glucose levels. So how much glucose is in your blood is your blood sugar, your body temperature, blood volume. So the amount of blood that's being circulated in your arteries at a certain point of time. These variables are all constantly changing, and your body tries to maintain them all in what we call a normal kind of range of static controls involves three main components, which you should know: the receptor, the control center, and then the effector. The receptor is any sort of sensor which monitors the environment, and it will respond to stimuli, which are things that cause changes in controlled variables. The control center is usually the brain or spinal cord. It will determine the set point at which the variable is maintained. So if that's body temperature, that's 37 degrees. It will receive input from the receptor, and it will determine an appropriate response. And then the effector receives the output from the control center. It provides the means to respond, and then its response will either reduce the stimulus, which we call negative feedback, or it will enhance the stimulus in the same direction, and we call that positive feedback. Negative feedback is more common in the body. The response reduces or shuts off the original stimulus. So the variable changes in the opposite direction of the initial change. And examples of negative feedback are regulations of body temperature and regulations of blood glucose by insulin. So your body temperature, if your body temperature gets above 37 degrees, so if you get too hot, you'll have your control center in your brain will tell you your muscles or your blood vessels to dissipate the heat a little bit more. If your body temperature gets too cold, the control center in your brain tells your muscles to shiver, so move to try to create more warmth. Blood glucose by insulin is an endocrine system mechanism, and we'll talk specifically what insulin does. Insulin always lowers blood glucose levels. So another example of negative feedback, receptors will sense an increased level of blood sugar in your arteries. So your blood glucose levels have increased. The pancreas, so sometimes a gland can be the control center, will then secrete insulin into the blood, and insulin will cause your body cells, which are the effectors, to absorb more blood glucose out of the blood, which will then decrease the amount of glucose in the blood. So that's just an example of a negative feedback loop. We kind of have an increase or an imbalance. So here's a stimulus producing a change in a variable that produces an imbalance, and that imbalance is detected by a receptor. The input is the information sent along what we call the afferent pathway to the control center to the brain or a gland. And then the efferent is always the output pathway that gets sent to the effector to stimulate some sort of response to try to feed back to reduce the effect of the stimulus and return the variable to a homeostatic level. So this is an example of trying to maintain these stable internal conditions. And this will take each one individually. So that's the homeostatic control. Here's the negative feedback loop specifically of temperature. So the balance, think of this balance as 37 degrees. That's what you want your body temperature to be at all times. If there's a stimulus of increase in heat of body temperature, the receptors in your skin and your brain will send through the afferent pathway, just letting the brain know that there's an increase in temperature, and the brain will send out a response to your sweat glands. And your sweat glands will cause evaporation of sweat, so your body temperature will then fall. So your sweat glands will try to dissipate that heat by sweating to try to bring the body temperature back to normal. In the opposite direction, cold will lower the body temperature. Again, the receptors in your skin will send that stimuli or stimulus up to the control center in the brain, which will send out a response to your effectors, your skeletal muscles, to start to shiver. And moving of the muscles will help to increase the body temperature to try to bring body temperature back to normal in this balance range. So that's kind of what negative feedback is. Positive feedback is a response that enhances or exaggerates the original stimulus. So positive feedback just continues the original stimulus until it's kind of shut off. It may exhibit a cascade or an amplifying effect as feedback causes the variable to continue in the same direction as the initial change. It usually controls infrequent events that do not require continuous adjustment. So there's a couple examples of this. If you've ever given birth, the labor contractions continue to get stronger and are enhanced by oxytocin. And oxytocin will continue to be pumped into the uterus to try to continue those contractions. And it only is shut off by the birth of the baby. And then the oxytocin levels go back down. Oxytocin is a hormone that helps to stimulate uterine contractions. Another example of positive feedback is the platelet plug formation and blood clotting. If you get hurt or injured, a break or tear occurs in the blood vessel wall, which initiates a positive feedback cycle, which tells the platelets to continue adhering to the site of injury and releasing chemicals. And this positive feedback loop continues to um, attract more platelets by releasing more chemicals. Releasing more chemicals attracts more platelets, and all of these platelets are working to try to plug up this site of injury that has occurred by a tear in the blood vessel wall. And this positive feedback mechanism will stop when the platelet plug is completely formed. So that's another example of positive feedback. Disturbances of homeostasis usually increases the risk of disease, so it can contribute to changes associated with aging. So any sort of imbalance in homeostasis, so basically when anything is out of whack inside of your body, disease could cause this, age could cause this. If negative feedback mechanisms become completely overwhelmed, destructive positive feedback mechanisms may take over, such as heart failure. So, if your heart is not doing what it should, the heart will continue beating, or the heart will start to, parts of the heart will start to kind of deteriorate and not work as well. And that's what a heart attack is, when scarring tissue of the heart. And I'm going to stop the recording here